President Trump, by the way, has voiced support for the Iranian protesters. He tweeted out 4 major tweets about this. He said, "Many reports of peaceful protests by Iranian citizens fed up with the regime's corruption, its squandering of the nation's wealth to fund terrorism. Iranian government should respect their people's rights, including the right to express themselves. The world is watching." Later, big protests in Iran. People are finally getting wise as to how their money and wealth is being stolen and squandered on terrorism. Looks like they will not take it any longer. The USA is watching very closely for human rights violations. Next tweet, Iran, the #1 state sponsor of terror, with numerous violations of human rights occurring on an hourly basis, has now closed down the internet. Not good. And then finally, Iran is failing at every level despite the terrible deal made with them by the Obama administration. The great Iranian people have been repressed for many years. They're hungry for food and for freedom. Along with human rights, the wealth of Iran is being looted. Time for change. How ominous. With that, we bring on Iran expert Josh Yasmeh, who has contributed reporting on these protests to a number of major outlets. And so I brought on Josh to clear this up because nobody knows anything about Iran. Josh, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
What's going on? What should we know about this?
So these protests began late Thursday, and they began rather small. They began as an anti-Rouhani protest. And
So Rouhani's the president.
Rouhani's the current
civil
president.
leader.
President Hassan Rouhani. This is a guy who was touted by the Obama administration as a moderate. And he didn't point out the fact that executions have skyrocketed under Rouhani. Acid attacks against women have skyrocketed. This is not a good guy. He's not a moderate. The whole hardliner moderate dichotomy just is pure fiction.
Because this is all we heard from Barack Obama, is there's a moderate in Iran. Rouhani is a moderate. We should support him to liberalize Iran. That's nonsense, you're saying.
It's absolute nonsense. And the reason why is every presidential candidate is vetted by the mullahs. There's something called the Guardian Council. And the Guardian Council vets candidates. And we saw back in 2009, they didn't like a candidate, Mousavi. And that's why we had the Green Revolution, because the mullahs suppressed this candidate and they said that we're only going to put forth candidates that are vetted and that subscribe to the Islamist regime.
Toe the party line, toe the Islamist line. So how should the United States respond?
I think the Trump administration has been doing a good job so far.
It's funny, that could just be the mantra of my show.
Yeah.
Since the show began, I think the Trump administration's been doing pretty good so far.
To be fair, I've been a pretty avid Trump critic, so I don't say that lightly. He's been doing a good job. Nikki Haley spoke earlier today, and she said that we're going to hold an emergency session at the United Nations. We're going to support the Iranian people. And they've been doing a good job at not inciting and not giving the Ayatollahs an excuse to make it seem like there is Western interference.
Blame all of this on the West. It's just the West stirring up trouble.
Yes, and the Ayatollahs are going to do that anyway, and they have been. Khamenei, he spoke out for the first time Tuesday, and he blamed the enemies of the Iranian regime.
So what practically, I don't think we're going to put boots on the ground, but I do have greater faith in Nikki Haley and Donald Trump to back up their threats with action, something that Barack Obama never did. What materially, what tangibly can the United States do to support this movement?
So first and foremost, we need to understand that this movement would not have happened several years ago. And the reason why is because now about 50 million Iranians have access to the internet. And this revolution, if you could call it that, is being fueled by an app called Telegram. Telegram is huge. Iranians use it. It's very Farsi friendly. Videos are being uploaded. And right now, Telegram is being blocked by the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime is blocking internet in most major cities. They're blocking social media. Twitter has been blocked since 2009. And what the United States needs to do, they need to put pressure on companies like Telegram. They need to put pressure on social media outlets to keep the lines of communication open.
Because that's the lifeline of the protest, basically.
That is the lifeline.
If you shut down the communication, this thing, I mean, this is all over the country, in some of the most religious cities.
Exactly. There's a city called Qom, and Qom is the Shia heartland of Iran. This is a place where in 1962, Ayatollah Khomeini began his Islamist revolution. And we had protesters there Friday after prayer. And this is when the people get riled up. This is when the imams come out and rile up the people. And they went out in the clerical heartland of the city and said, "Death to the Islamic Republic, death to Khamenei." That's like
Death
going
to the Ayatollah, the supreme leader of Iran.
Exactly.
So they could be killed for that.
They could be killed. And right now in Tehran, 450 arrests. The regime has already said that they face the death penalty.
They're going to kill them all. They have to kill them all, don't they?
They may kill them all, or like they did in 2009, they could torture them really brutally.
Wow. So speaking of Ayatollah Khomeini, and it's a little confusing, the old guy was Khomeini, and the new guy is Khamenei.
Khamenei.
Yeah, I don't do that. Yeah. You know, I always notice this. My lefty friends, they always try to pronounce things very exaggeratedly native, so they'll say, you know, like Muslim, you know, or Pakistan or something. But I don't go to Italian restaurants and say like, okay, I'd like to order the spaghetti alla carbonara, per favore. No, you just, you know. So I like to very ostentatiously pronounce them in an anglicized way, you know. Now, one thing they're chanting in the streets, according to the reporting that we have, is bring back the Shah, the Shah who was ousted in the Iranian Revolution. What does that mean?
It's a way to defy the regime. There is no topic more taboo in the Islamic Republic of Iran than the Shah. This is why we had the 1979 revolution. You had Islamist factions, you had the working poor stand up and say, we don't want the autocratic Shah. And to be clear, the Shah does not have immense support in Iran. And he does not have immense support in the Iranian exile community.
It's just like a screw you, basically.
It's basically a screw you, and it's basically a way to invoke nostalgia for a time and a place that was better than now.
To make Iran great again.
Exactly.
The Shah 2018, make Iran great again. So the last thing I want to talk to you about, the Obama fans are taking credit for this. And they're saying, look, the deal gave them a ton of money and it exposed weaknesses in their economy, which then led to another protest, which were we still in power, we wouldn't support at all. But because we're not in power, we'll take some credit for it. Is this all revisionist nonsense, or is there something to it?
It's revisionist nonsense.
That's what I thought. I'm glad you said that.
There is, I mean, check Twitter, probably the most smug human being on the planet, Ben Rhodes.
I knew you were going to say Ben Rhodes.
Rhodes.
He is the smuggest. He is awful. He was smug in office.
Yeah.
And he was the one who joked about how he fooled the American people and they were all a bunch of rubes. Yeah.
Javad Zarif, who is Iran's foreign minister, he negotiated the Iran nuclear deal with Kerry. He was the smartest man in the room, and he fooled Americans, essentially. And what we're seeing now is we're seeing a backlash by the Iranian people because Rouhani overpromised as a result of the nuclear deal. The nuclear deal, he said that this is going to open up the world, the banking system, sanctions relief, and he didn't deliver. And Iran is still impoverished. Drug abuse is up, prostitution is up, and these people are suffering. And the Obama administration did little to alleviate their misery. Rouhani has done very little to help the working poor. And bear in mind that the regime always blames these sorts of dissident movements on the middle or upper classes.
Right.
Because they draw a huge portion of their support from the working class. And that's because they've made the working class dependent on the governments and welfare benefits.
It's all handouts for the working poor.
All handouts. And they expect blind allegiance in return. And this is very much a working class revolution.
It looks like they started it. Now it seems, from the reporting I read, the working class started this as an economic movement, and only later did the middle classes jump on about political oppression and suppression. But this began with the working poor in Iran.
That's exactly right. It began as an anti-Rouhani protest that basically they expressed their grievances over the lack of economic growth.
But it's become an anti-Ayatollah protest.
It has. As of Friday, it became a political movement.
So it's no longer just about the regime that happens to be running the government. This is about the whole governmental system and structure of Iran.
They want to tear it all down.
Wow. Gotta love it. That's kind of like in America. We do that sometimes, a little less bloody, a little more fun, you know. We say tear down the establishment. But clearly, anti-establishment movements have spread even to Iran, and maybe the United States will support it.